He stumbled into the lobby, shirt clinging with sweat, shoes covered in dust. A guard sneered, "You walked here? 10 miles? For this job?" The man lowered his eyes, too tired to answer. What no one knew, not the guard, not the other applicants, was that the CEO had been watching everything. From the very first step. The morning sun burned against cracked sidewalks as a lone figure pressed forward, each step heavy, deliberate. His shirt was damp, his shoes worn thin. Cars sped past, their drivers hardly noticing the man who had been walking since dawn. 10 miles. 10 endless miles. All for a single chance, a job interview that could change everything. At the building's entrance, a security guard frowned. Dust clung to the man's pants and his hands trembled from exhaustion. The guard's voice cut sharp. "You look like you came out of a storm. You think they'll hire you looking like this?" The lobby fell quiet. Other candidates shifted in their polished shoes, avoiding his eyes. But the man said nothing. He only tightened his grip on the folded resume in his hand and stood in silence. His name was Daniel, a single father, a man carrying more than his own weight. His silence was not weakness. It was discipline, born from years of holding his pain where no one else could see. Not long ago, Daniel wore a different uniform. He had served his country with quiet pride, learning to march long distances with no complaint, to endure hunger and fatigue for the sake of those beside him. The battlefield had taken friends from him, brothers in arms whose laughter still echoed in his memory. When he returned home, the medals meant little. The war was behind him, but another battle had begun. His wife had passed, leaving him alone with a little boy who looked at him with wide, trusting eyes. Daniel promised him a better life. But promises are heavy when rent is due, when cupboards echo with emptiness. Every morning, Daniel rose before dawn to work odd jobs, yet it was never enough. When the interview offer came, it felt like a doorway cracked open. He could not let it close, not for himself, but for his son. Inside the waiting room, whispers swirled. Candidates wore suits pressed crisp, shoes polished like glass. Daniel's shoes bore the dust of 10 miles. His shirt was creased, his breathing unsteady. Some smirked, others glanced and then looked away, unwilling to acknowledge the discomfort of his presence. The receptionist, with a raised brow, hesitated before handing him a form. "You sure you're in the right place?" she asked softly, her tone laced with doubt. Again, Daniel answered with silence. He only took the paper, sat down, and filled in every blank with steady handwriting. Every movement of his spoke louder than words. His stillness was defiance. His silence was a shield. Escalation minutes dragged on. An hour passed. One by one, candidates were called in, their polished confidence echoing in the hallways. Daniel sat waiting. Hunger gnawed at him, but he remained unmoving, eyes fixed on the resume folded in his lap. Whispers grew sharper. He's wasting his time. Why even bother? A young man laughed quietly, shaking his head. Yet Daniel did not flinch. He carried the weight of ridicule as he once carried his gear, without a word. What no one knew was that an unseen pair of eyes had been watching. The CEO, seated in a glass office above, had seen Daniel arrive. He had watched him push through the revolving doors, sweat dripping, shoulders squared despite exhaustion. Every gesture, every silence had been witnessed. Finally, the receptionist called his name. Daniel rose slowly, his legs stiff from the long wait. He entered the interview room, expecting the usual questions, the skeptical glances. Instead, the CEO himself sat waiting, not an assistant, not a manager. The CEO leaned forward. "You walked here, didn't you?" His tone was not mocking. It was curious, almost reverent. Daniel nodded once. Silence stretched between them, heavy and profound. Then the CEO spoke words that would change everything. "A man who walks 10 miles for the chance to work will walk through anything for his family. That's the kind of man I want on my team." Quotes, "Of silent dignity, sometimes silence is the loudest proof of strength. A man who carries his burden without complaint teaches the world what honor looks like. 10 miles on foot reveal more character than 10 years on paper." News spread through the building before Daniel even left the room. The same people who once smirked now looked with widened eyes. The guard at the door lowered his gaze in shame. As Daniel stepped back into the lobby, something remarkable happened. Candidates who had mocked him fell silent, some even standing as he walked past. as though in quiet respect for a man they had underestimated. Outside, the air was cooler, the sky a little brighter. Daniel walked those same streets again, but this time his steps carried a different weight. In his pocket lay not just the folded resume, but a signed offer. His son would eat well tonight. His future was no longer uncertain. There are battles fought in silence that no one sees. There are victories earned not by loud words, but by quiet endurance. Daniel's story is not only about walking 10 miles, it is about carrying faith, sacrifice, and dignity every single day. Respect should never be measured by suits or polished shoes, but by the unseen miles a person walks when no one is watching. If this story moved you, share where you're watching from in the comments below. What would you have done if you had seen him walking that long road? And if you want to hear more stories that honor silent heroes, make sure to subscribe. Because somewhere right now another Daniel is walking his unseen miles.